The chapel is dim, the air heavy with quiet grief. Soft murmurs ripple through the rows of chairs, but beneath it all lies an undercurrent of tension, like a storm waiting to break. I stand at the edge, in my military uniform, the sharp creases and polished metals stark against the muted black worn by the others. At just 25, I'm younger than most here, but I carry the weight of my father's legacy like a second skin. He was a general, a man of honor and discipline, a leader who commanded respect from every soldier who served under him. And yet, in this room filled with family, I am no one. Not really. The whispers trail after me like shadows. I catch fragments. She shouldn't be here. Not his daughter. The uniform's just a mask. The words sting more than any wound. I remember when I was first told I couldn't come. The words hit me like a slap. This is a family matter, they said. You don't belong. It was my own blood turning me away. But I was determined. I had to be here. For him. For the man who raised me to serve, to lead, to never back down. And for me, to confront the silence that has grown between us. I move through the crowd cautiously, each step measured, each breath steady. The relatives avoid my eyes. Aunt Margaret's stare is sharp and cold. Uncle James barely nods, as if my presence is an inconvenience. Cousins I once played with now whisper behind their hands. It's as if I've become a ghost in my own family's story. My mother stands at the front, near the casket. Her face is pale, a mask of grief. But when our eyes meet, briefly, there's something else there. A flicker of something I can't name. Guilt? Regret? Or maybe the same confusion I feel. She turns away quickly, her shoulders stiff. I want to reach out, to bridge the gap that's formed between us, but the space feels unbreachable. The preacher's voice rises, steady and solemn, beginning the eulogy. I listen, the words swirling around me like a distant storm. They speak of honor, sacrifice, and duty, the very values my father lived by. But the room feels colder, the distance wider. I fight back the lump in my throat, the ache in my chest. How can I mourn when I'm treated like an intruder in my own grief? I glance down at my hands, the sleeves of my uniform crisp and clean. This uniform, it's more than fabric and metals. It's my connection to him, to the man who taught me resilience and strength. Yet here it feels like a barrier, a symbol of the divide between me and this gathering. Whispers continue to swirl around me, but I hold my ground. I am here to honor him. To remember the man who was not just a general, but my father. The man who shaped me into the woman I've become. The woman who refuses to be invisible. Before we go any further, I want to know, where are you tuning in from? Wherever you are, if this story touches something inside you, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow, I've saved something extra special. Something that will change everything you think you know about family, loyalty, and honor. But for now, back in the chapel, the eulogy continues. The words echo in my ears, but my mind drifts to memories of my father, his voice, firm yet kind, telling me to stand tall no matter what. And I promise myself, I will. Because this isn't just about a funeral. It's about reclaiming my place in a story that isn't finished yet. Whispers of discontent. The words float through the room, soft but sharp, like the rustling of dry leaves underfoot. I hear them, those whispers, slicing through the quiet like a blade. She should have chosen a safer path. Does she even care what this family has been through? She's shaming us all. Each phrase is a javelin aimed at my back. I stand still, military uniform crisp against my skin, metals gleaming under the dim light. But inside, I'm unraveling. The eulogy drones on, a tapestry of memories woven with sorrow and pride. Yet my mind drifts away from the words spoken, and back to my father, his eyes bright with pride the day I enlisted. I remember the way he stood tall, chest swelling like a mighty oak, when I told him I was joining the Marines. He didn't ask if it was dangerous. He didn't plead for me to choose safer ground. No, he smiled that steady smile of his and said, "You're carrying this family's name forward, in your own way." That memory is a spark in the dark, a flicker of warmth amidst the cold judgment swirling around me now. I glance across the room. Faces I once called family. They wear sorrow like a mask, but beneath it, I see the judgment, the tightened jaws, the narrowed eyes, the subtle shaking of heads. They see a daughter who chose boots over silk, service over comfort. A daughter who, by their calculation, betrayed the family legacy. Their whispers grow louder, more pointed. Why risk it? Why wear that uniform when you could have stayed safe? Quote, "Do you even understand what you're doing to us? Is this really what he would have wanted?" Each word feels like a fresh wound. What do they know of sacrifice, of honor, of standing tall when the world tries to knock you down? I remember the nights I spent training, the early mornings when the sun had barely risen, the calls that came with news of fallen comrades. I remember my father's voice over the phone, steady and proud, never once telling me to quit. The family's disdain is a shadow that threatens to swallow me whole, but I refuse to be lost in it. I see the Marines standing quietly in the corner, silent sentinels in dress blues, their eyes fixed on me. They know, they understand. To them, I am not just a woman in uniform. I am their general, their leader, their family. Their respect is a shield, their salute a promise. I breathe in, steadying myself. The whispered accusations try to chip away at my spirit, but I won't let them. My father's legacy isn't about safety or comfort. It's about courage, about honor, about standing up for what you believe in even when the world turns its back. I think of all the sacrifices he made, the battles he fought, not just on distant fields, but within himself, to raise me to be strong, to be fearless. His pride was never in the quiet life, but in the life of purpose. And this is my purpose. The murmurs continue, but they grow distant, like echoes in a vast canyon. I focus on the Marines, on the steady rhythm of their breathing, the sharpness of their salute. They see me, not as the black sheep, not as the shame, but as a symbol of strength and resilience. I will not let their opinions define me. I will honor my father's memory by embracing my path, not despite it. The whispers fade into the background as my resolve hardens. I am more than their doubts. I am more than their fears. First, I'm a Marine, a leader, a daughter who carries her father's legacy forward with pride. The room feels smaller now, the weight of judgment lighter. I stand taller. Because this uniform, this life, is my truth. And no whispered word can take that away. I hear it again, clearer this time, cutting through the silence. "General, ma'am." The Marines stand, their salute crisp and unwavering. I return it, a silent vow echoing in my heart. I am here, I am proud, and I am not alone. The moment of truth. The ceremony was unfolding with the solemn rhythm of tradition, the low murmur of the crowd, the steady cadence of the Marine band playing a dirge, and the gentle rustling of flags in the breeze. I stood there in my dress blues, the weight of my uniform grounding me as much as it marked me. Yet beneath that calm exterior, my phone vibrated sharply against my leg, a sudden intrusion that shattered the fragile peace. I glanced down. A text from my mother. "You are not to speak at the funeral." Those words hit me harder than any salute, heavier than any loss I had ever carried. The hurt, raw and immediate, tightened my chest. It felt like being banned not just from the ceremony but from my own family's remembrance of my father, the man I had idolized, whose footsteps I had tried so desperately to follow, the man whose sacrifices had shaped everything I was, and everything I was becoming. But beneath the hurt, a fire sparked. It flared quietly at first, a slow burn that grew into a fierce blaze. I thought of my father, the countless deployments, the long nights away from home, the battles fought not just abroad but within himself, how he carried the weight of duty with unwavering resolve, even when it broke him, how he gave his life, not just in service but in love for a country that demanded everything and more. And I, what had I given? I thought of my own sacrifices, the missed birthdays, the lost friendships, the sleepless nights filled with doubt and determination, the times I had been told I wasn't enough, that my rank was a barrier, that my gender was a question, how I had risen through every challenge, every whispered doubt, not in spite of who I was but because of it. I swallowed hard and looked around the crowd. Many faces were unfamiliar, but the uniforms told their stories. Soldiers, Marines, officers, all gathered to honor a life devoted to service. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, I noticed their eyes. Not cold judgment, but something else. Respect. Understanding. Solidarity. A silent message that crossed the space between us, saying without words, "We see you, we stand with you." The fire inside me roared louder. I would not stand down. I would not be silenced. Not today. The final hymn played, and the chaplain's voice closed the service with words of comfort and remembrance. The crowd began to stir, the rustle of movement filling the air. My heart was pounding, loud, insistent, as if it wanted the world to hear its truth. I stepped forward, each movement deliberate, my boots finding their rhythm on the grass. The chatter softened, then halted entirely, all eyes turned toward me. A hush fell over the crowd like a breath held in anticipation. I felt the weight of every gaze, every expectation, every unspoken question. And then, without hesitation, I climbed the steps to the podium. I looked out over the sea of faces, friends, strangers, fellow warriors, and I found my voice. Today, I began, we gather to honor a man who gave everything to this country. My father was more than a soldier. He was a beacon of strength, a keeper of promises, a man who believed in something greater than himself. I paused, steadying the quiver in my voice. He carried the weight of war with dignity and grace, and yes, that burden changed him, but it never broke him. My father taught me that sacrifice is not just about what you lose, it's about what you choose to fight for. My gaze swept the crowd. There were nods from the Marines, salutes from soldiers who understood the language of service. I too have made sacrifices, I said, my voice growing stronger, fueled by the fire that had ignited inside me moments ago. I have walked paths that were never meant for someone like me. I have faced doubt, rejection, and silence. But I have never backed down. Because standing here, wearing this uniform, is not just about honoring my father's legacy, it's about honoring my own. The silence that followed was profound. It was not the silence of discomfort, but of respect, of recognition. And then, as I finished, something extraordinary happened. A group of Marines standing near the back rose to their feet. One by one, others joined them. Their posture straightened, their eyes locked on me with unwavering respect. And then, with a precision that spoke volumes, they saluted. "General Ma'am," came the clear, proud call. The words echoed through the gathering, a powerful affirmation not just of rank, but of recognition, of acceptance, of a bond forged in shared sacrifice and unyielding commitment. In that moment, all the pain of being banned, all the sting of rejection, was swallowed by something far greater, belonging. I returned the salute, my voice steady and proud. Thank you. Because today I was not just a daughter denied a voice. I was a leader, a Marine, a woman who refused to be silenced. And above all, I was honoring my father's memory with every fiber of my being. A voice for the voiceless. The room was heavy with silence as I stepped forward, the weight of my uniform grounding me. My voice didn't waver, even though inside a storm raged. I took a breath and began. My father taught me many things, not just words, but values, courage, integrity, service. These weren't just lessons for life, they were a code, a standard to hold myself to, no matter the cost. I looked around the room, catching eyes that shifted uneasily. Some faces softened, the hard edges of judgment blurring just a little. Others remained still, arms crossed, eyes guarded. But I pressed on. Courage isn't always loud. It isn't always bold. Sometimes courage is standing alone, facing those who doubt you, who question your choices. Integrity means staying true to yourself, even when it hurts the people you love. Service means giving more than you take, putting something bigger than yourself above all else. I paused, letting the words settle. The air felt different now, charged with something I hadn't expected, attention. I know I was banned from this funeral. I know that my choice to wear this uniform, to serve in the military, was seen as a betrayal. But I stand here today not to ask for forgiveness. I stand here to tell you why I made this choice, and how it is the truest way I could honor the man we all loved. A few heads nodded, subtle but real. The room was no longer a place of rejection. It was becoming a place of reckoning. My father believed in strength, not just physical strength, but strength of character. He believed in sacrifice, giving up comfort, safety, certainty, for something greater. That is why I joined the Marines. Not to defy him, not to fight him, but because I carry his legacy in my heart. I saw her then, the woman who had barred me from this moment, her eyes glistening, though her expression remained guarded. I wasn't sure if she understood yet, but I had to keep going. Every day in uniform I face challenges my father faced in his own way. I stand watch, I lead, I protect. I carry the burden of responsibility not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. It takes strength to serve, a strength that I learned from him. The room shifted again. The atmosphere lightened, softened. Some arms unfolded. Some eyes met mine with something like respect. I felt that fragile bridge forming, a connection between my path and his. I wasn't just a daughter to him. I am now a general in the Marines. That title doesn't erase the past. It doesn't erase the pain or the doubts. But it honors the promise I made, to live with courage, to lead with integrity, and to serve with every fiber of my being. A murmur rose, quiet but growing. I could feel the tide turning. My uniform is not a symbol of rebellion. It is a symbol of commitment. Commitment to the values he held dear, to the family he loved, to the country he served. I am here because of him, not in spite of him. The Marines standing behind me shifted in unison. Their salute was sharp, respectful. "General, ma'am," they said. Their voices echoed the strength and honor I carried inside. I looked back at the crowd. The hard lines softened further. Some faces that had been closed now showed understanding. A few even nodded, slow and deliberate. This was more than a speech. It was a reclaiming of my voice, my story, my place in the family narrative. I am the daughter my father raised me to be, not the one some expected, but the one he would have been proud to stand beside. I am here to be a voice for the voiceless, for those who walk a path less understood, who carry burdens unseen. I felt the power in that moment, not just from the uniform on my back, but from the truth in my words. I stand before you, not just as a Marine, but as a daughter who refuses to be silenced. My service is my tribute, my strength is my inheritance, my honor is my promise. The room was quiet again, but this time it was a quiet born of respect, not rejection. I had bridged the gap between past and present, between expectation and reality. I had found my place, not in spite of the family I loved, but because of it. And in that moment, their salute was more than protocol. It was a recognition, a reconciliation, a salute not just to a rank, but to a legacy reclaimed. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice steady, "for listening, for seeing me, for understanding that service isn't a betrayal, it's a continuation of everything my father believed in." The Marines stood tall behind me, unwavering. The family before me, once divided, now began to see the truth I carried in every step, every word, every breath. I was no longer banned. I was honored. I was home. A salute from the past. As I finished the last words of my speech, the chapel fell into a heavy silence. The weight of the moment pressed down on me, but so did the unshakable pride in my chest. I had stood there, not just as a daughter mourning her father, but as a Marine standing tall in my own right. The words I spoke had been my truth, my tribute to a man who had shaped everything I am. Then, from the back of the room, a figure moved forward. At first, I barely registered him. An older man, his back straight, his step steady. He wore the quiet dignity of a Marine who had seen years, battles, and brotherhood beyond measure. The room seemed to hold its breath as he approached the podium. The murmurs faded, and all eyes turned to him. He stopped before me, eyes locked with mine, and without a word raised his hand in a crisp, precise salute. The gesture was simple, but it spoke volumes. "General, ma'am." The words echoed in my mind, not spoken aloud, but carried in the honor of that salute. I felt a wave of something I hadn't expected. Respect, yes. But more than that, a deep, steady current of shared history. This man had known my father. He had walked the same paths, faced the same storms, and carried the same burdens. And now, he was saluting me, not just as his friend's daughter, but as a fellow Marine, as a leader. His voice broke the silence, low and steady, resonating with the kind of certainty only time and experience can give. I served alongside your father. I saw what kind of man he was. Brave, unwavering in his duty, and fiercely protective of those under his command. But more than that, he was a man of honor. A man who believed in values that never change: loyalty, courage, and integrity. He paused, glancing around the room, his gaze landing on each face like a silent call to remember. He raised you to carry those same values, to stand tall, no matter the obstacles, to lead with your heart and your conviction. And standing here today, in your uniform, I see that legacy alive and strong. The chapel was still. Then, slowly, one by one, others began to rise. Marines, veterans, friends of my father, even some distant relatives who had been silent until now. They all stood, and with a collective resolve, they brought their hands up to their foreheads in a salute that filled the room with a new kind of reverence. "General Ma'am," the retired Marine said again, voice firm, eyes glistening with pride. "Your father was a great man, and you carry his spirit forward." In that moment, the barriers that had tried to keep me out, the whispers that questioned my place here, faded into nothingness. I was not alone. I never had been. The Marines around me, standing in that chapel, were a living testament to my father's life and to the path he had set for me. I straightened my back, returned the salute with every ounce of pride I felt, and knew that this was more than just a ceremony. It was a passing of the torch. A silent vow that his courage would not be forgotten, and that I would carry it with honor. The room remained standing. The weight of the salute, of the respect, was a bridge between past and present, between a father's legacy and a daughter's journey. And as I looked out at the faces around me, I understood that the real strength of the Marines isn't just in their uniforms or ranks, it's in their commitment to one another, across generations. The words of the retired Marines stayed with me, echoing in the quiet aftermath. "Never doubt who you are, General. You belong here. Your father's fight is your fight. And we're all with you." The salute lingered, the silence filled with unspoken support. And for the first time since this day began, I felt the full weight of that truth settle inside me. I was not banned. I was not alone. I was home. Rising tide of acceptance. The moment the retired Marines snapped to attention and delivered that crisp, unwavering salute, something shifted. The room held its breath. The weight of years, the heavy silence that had hung over the crowd like a thick fog, it began to lift. That single act, a salute from one Marine to another, carried more than respect. It carried a message no one could deny. She belonged here. I stood there, in my uniform, feeling the eyes slowly turn toward me. At first, it was just a flicker, an eyebrow raised, a quick glance exchanged between family members. Then, it grew. The murmurs that had felt like daggers, the whispered judgments about my presence, softened. The cold stares melted into something else. Something I hadn't dared hope for, acknowledgement. I caught the way my aunt's lips parted, not in scorn, but in surprise. My cousin's shoulders relaxed. Even my grandfather, who had barely spoken since I arrived, gave a subtle nod. The tension in the room, so thick it had stifled every breath, started to dissolve like morning mist under the sun. The whispers changed tone. They were no longer words of exclusion, but of admiration. There were no loud proclamations, no sudden cheers, but the quiet respect was undeniable. "General Ma'am" wasn't just a formality, it was recognition. It was acceptance. I felt it in every glance, every hesitant step toward me. Family members who had once turned away now offered small smiles, tentative greetings. The walls I thought would never come down began to crack. I could feel the weight of their disapproval lifting, piece by piece, moment by moment. And then I found her. My mother. Our eyes locked across the room. I searched for any sign of the coldness that had shadowed her face since the moment I arrived. Instead, I saw something else. Something fragile but real. A flicker of pride, a spark of understanding. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her slow, deliberate nod spoke volumes. It was an olive branch. A quiet admission that, while she might not fully grasp the choices I'd made, she could see the love I carried for my father. That love was undeniable, and in that moment it bridged the gap between us. For years, I had felt like an outsider in my own family. Like my uniform, my service, and my identity had built walls instead of bridges. But standing there, bathed in the soft glow of that salute and the ripple of changed hearts, I realized something profound. This moment was a beginning. Not just for me, but for all of us. The rising tide of acceptance was gentle but steady, washing away old wounds and dissolving years of misunderstanding. My family might never fully comprehend the path I had chosen. They might never see everything the way I did. But they could see that I loved my father. That I honored him in the only way I knew how, by standing tall, by wearing the uniform, by answering the call. The Marine's salute had cracked the silence. It had opened a door, and through that door healing began to flow. I could almost hear the unspoken words filling the space between us. We see you, we hear you. We are here. And in that there was hope. Hope that the next time the family gathered, it wouldn't be with whispers of judgment or glances filled with doubt. It would be with open hearts, with hands reaching out instead of pushing away. The retired Marine's salute was more than a gesture, it was a catalyst. A quiet revolution in a room that had seemed frozen in time. It reminded everyone present that honor isn't just in the battles fought on distant fields. It's in the courage to stand tall in the face of rejection. To claim your place, even when others try to deny it. As I stood there, feeling the shift ripple through the crowd, I knew this was not a moment of victory, it was a moment of grace. A moment when family, bound by loss and love, began to see me, not just as the girl in uniform, but as their daughter, their kin, their family. And that was everything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The murmurs of admiration wrapped around me like a warm embrace. I could almost feel my father's presence there, quiet and proud, shining through the sorrow. This was the legacy I carried forward. Not just as a Marine, but as a daughter who refused to be erased. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be hard conversations, lingering doubts, maybe even some wounds that never fully healed. But tonight, the rising tide of acceptance had begun to wash over us all. It had started with a salute, a single powerful act of respect, and it ended with a family beginning to heal. I looked around once more, locking eyes with each familiar face. There was still some distance, yes, some questions left unanswered. But more than that, there was a quiet, growing understanding, a recognition that love, in all its forms, is worth fighting for. The Marines stood tall beside me, their presence a shield and a testament to the bond we shared. And as they saluted me, General, ma'am, I felt the impossible become real. I was not banned, I was not an outsider, I was home. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Embracing the legacy. The service had ended, but the weight in my chest didn't lift right away. I stood there, still in my uniform, surrounded by the quiet murmurs of the crowd beginning to disperse. The same crowd that, just hours before, had made it clear I wasn't welcome here. Not at the beginning, not at the heart of this day. Yet here I was. Still standing. Still them. It wasn't long before the first family member approached me. Her eyes were cautious, almost searching, as if measuring whether I was the enemy or the daughter she barely recognized. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for your loss, she said, her voice low and hesitant. Your father was a good man. Strong, brave. You carry that in you too. Her words were simple, but to me, they felt monumental. After months of silence and distance, this tentative offering felt like a bridge being quietly laid down. I nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in my throat. Thank you, I managed. That means a lot. Another family member came forward soon after. This one was a man. Older, his hands weathered like the bark of an ancient tree. He looked at me with a mixture of respect and regret. "Your father, he was the backbone of this family," he said. "You've got his fire, don't forget that." I felt a flicker of warmth grow inside me. These small exchanges, awkward and fragile, were cracks in the wall that had kept us apart for so long. Each word, each glance was a step toward something I hadn't dared hope for: reconciliation. They began to tell me stories, quiet, heartfelt memories of my father. How he stood tall in the face of every challenge. How his laughter could fill a room, and his silence could command respect. They spoke of his bravery, not just as a Marine, but as a man who never gave up on the people he loved, even when it was hard. One relative recalled a night long ago when my father had stayed up all night helping a neighbor in need. Another shared how he had quietly supported his family through hardships no one else ever knew about. Each story painted a picture of a man who was larger than the conflicts that had divided us. Listening, I felt something shift inside me. A connection I thought was lost forever began to grow. Despite the years of silence and the walls we'd built, we all shared the same love for him, the same grief. It was a bond stronger than any argument or misunderstanding. The youngest cousin smiled at me shyly. "He always said you'd make him proud. Guess he was right." I looked down at my uniform, the medals pinned over my heart, and then back at the faces around me. For the first time, I saw more than strangers or distant relatives. I saw my family. "I want to rebuild," I said quietly, my voice steady. "Not just for me, but for him. To honor his legacy, not only through my service, but by healing the rifts we've let grow." A woman, my aunt, reached out and squeezed my hand. He would have wanted that. We all would. I realized then that honoring my father meant more than wearing his uniform or carrying his name. It meant embracing the family he loved, even when it was hard. It meant finding the strength to forgive and be forgiven. As more relatives came forward, sharing stories and offering their support, I felt the walls inside me begin to crumble. The same Marines who had stood and saluted me with the words "General, ma'am," had reminded me of the respect and duty I carried. But here, in this gathering of family, I learned that true honor also meant love and reconciliation. Each conversation was a small victory, a piece of the puzzle that was my family coming back together. I smiled at the memories they shared, feeling the weight of loss but also the promise of new beginnings. I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more hard conversations, more moments of doubt and pain. But for the first time in a long time, I believed it was possible to rebuild what had been broken. My father's legacy was not just in the medals or the uniform. It was in the strength of family, the courage to face hard truths, and the willingness to stand together, even after we had fallen apart. "I'll carry his memory with me," I said, voice full of determination, "not just as a Marine, but as his daughter. And I'll do everything I can to bring us back together." The family members around me nodded, some with tears in their eyes, others with quiet smiles. We were all united by loss, but now also by hope. As I looked around at their faces, I felt a deep, unspoken understanding settle between us. We were no longer just separate pieces. We were part of a whole, and together we would honor him in the best way we knew how, by healing, by loving, and by moving forward. The Marine's salute had reminded me of my duty to country. But these moments, these fragile, beautiful moments, reminded me of my duty to family. Both legacies, intertwined like the threads of a single, unbreakable tapestry. And so, I vowed then and there, to carry my father's legacy not only on my uniform but in my heart, and to never stop fighting for the family he loved as fiercely as he had loved his country. The call to service. The days after the funeral stretched long and heavy, each one a quiet battle inside me. I sat alone in my small room, the weight of being banned from saying goodbye pressing on my chest like a stone. I replayed the moments over and over, the sting of exclusion, the sharp edges of silent judgment. But then I remembered, my father's voice, steady and sure, echoing in my mind. "Service is about more than orders and ranks," he used to say. "It's about who you become when no one's watching." Those words had shaped me, pulled me through every grueling training exercise, every sleepless night far from home, and now they offered me a lifeline. I thought about the Marines who stood and saluted me at the funeral, Their eyes held respect. No hesitation, no doubt. They saw me as general, ma'am, even when my own blood refused to. That moment wasn't just about rank or ceremony. It was a testament, a declaration that I belonged here, on this path I had chosen. The phone rang, breaking the heavy silence one morning. The voice on the other end was familiar, calm, authoritative. Ma'am, we have a new deployment opportunity. It's challenging, but it's critical. You're the best fit for the mission. My heart quickened. Excitement surged through me, mingling with a familiar knot of anxiety. This was more than just another assignment. This was a chance to honor my father's legacy, to prove to myself and to the family that had shut me out that my service mattered, that my path was valid. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The weight of the past week lifted slightly, replaced by a fierce determination. I could feel the fire reigniting, the same fire that had driven me through every obstacle, every doubt, every whispered slight. There would be challenges ahead. There always were. But I was ready to meet them head-on. Not just as a soldier, but as a daughter striving for acceptance. To carry the name that meant so much, and to forge a new way forward. Yes, sir, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I'm ready. Reconciling duty and family. I folded the last piece of my uniform carefully, the fabric still crisp, smelling faintly of starch and the sea. The room was quiet except for the soft rustle of gear sliding into the duffel bag. Each item felt heavier than the last, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. This deployment meant more than just duty. It was a bridge between what I had lost and what I was becoming. I glanced at the framed photo on my dresser, Dad in his Marine Corps dress blues, standing tall, eyes steady and proud. The same man who had been taken from me before I could even say goodbye. The man whose funeral I wasn't allowed to attend. The memories of that day still burned fresh, raw, and confusing. How could I be banned from saying farewell to my own father? And yet, here I was, wearing the same uniform, carrying the legacy he left behind. The phone buzzed softly. It was Mom. "Are you almost ready?" Her voice was softer than I remembered. "Yeah, just packing the last things." I paused, my fingers hesitating over a photo of us. "Mom, can we talk?" There was a long silence, then a breath. "I'd like that." She came over that evening, sitting beside me on the edge of the bed. The air between us was thick with words unspoken, with years of silence filled with pain and pride tangled together. "I know I wasn't the mother you wanted," she said finally, eyes glistening. "I was scared, scared of what the military takes from families. I saw what it took from us, from your father." I nodded, feeling the weight of her fear. "I know you were scared, and I know I made it harder by going this route. But Mom, serving. It's not just about following in Dad's footsteps. It's about honoring him, yes, but also about who I want to be. I want to make a difference. I want to carry his legacy, but I also want to write my own story." She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "I'm sorry I pushed you away. I didn't understand your calling. I thought I was protecting you." "I get that now," I said softly. "But protecting me doesn't mean stopping me. It means standing by me. Just like those Marines did at Dad's funeral." Her eyes widened, caught by the memory. "I never told you how proud I was when they stood and saluted you, General Ma'am. It was more than a salute. It was a recognition of your strength, Your Honor." Tears traced down her cheeks. "I was wrong to keep you from that moment. You deserve to be there. You deserve to be seen." I squeezed her hand. "We were both grieving in our own ways. But now I want us to heal. I want us to find peace in this." She nodded slowly. "I think your father would have been proud, not just of the rank or the uniform, but of the woman you've become." "I carry him with me every day," I said, voice steady. "But I'm more than just his daughter. I'm a Marine, and I'm ready to serve." For the first time in years, our conversation felt like a true beginning. No blame. No distance. Just two women connected by love, loss, and now, understanding. Packing the last of my things, I felt a calm I hadn't known before. The past didn't have to define me. Dad's legacy was a part of me, but it was not all of me. I zipped up my bag and stood, straightening my uniform. The weight of the deployment ahead was balanced by the strength of the bond renewed behind me. As I looked at my reflection, I saw not only the Marine my father had inspired, but the leader I was becoming, resilient, determined, and whole. This was my story now, and I was ready to live it. A new chapter begins. The morning sun filters through the window, casting a soft glow on the uniform laid out neatly on the bed. Today is the day. The day she steps into the world she's fought so hard to be part of, the world that once shut its doors on her. The day she leaves behind the echoes of a painful past and steps forward into a future defined not by rejection but by honor. She stands tall before her family, the weight of her uniform grounding her even as her heart races with a flood of emotions. Anticipation dances with anxiety, and beneath it all, a quiet, steady pride. This isn't just a goodbye, it's a declaration. She is not the girl they once doubted. She is a soldier now, a general even. And finally they see her as both a daughter and a warrior. Her mother steps forward first. The smile that reaches her eyes is different now. No hesitation, no confusion. Just pure, unwavering love. "You're going to be amazing," she says softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be so proud." Her sister, usually so guarded, reaches out and squeezes her hand. "I know you'll come back safe, and when you do, we'll have a million stories to share." Her younger brother tries to hide a lump in his throat, but the admiration in his eyes is clear. "You're my hero," he whispers almost shyly. Every word, every gesture wraps around her like a shield. The family that once struggled to understand now stands firmly behind her. It's a support she's longed for, something real, something unshakable. She looks at each of them, drinking in this moment. The tension that haunted her for years begins to dissolve. The rejection, the whispers, the slammed doors, they all fade into the background. Because today, she is not just the girl who was banned from a funeral, or the one who had to fight for respect. Today, she is a leader, a general, and the Marines, who once stood silently beside her, now salute with pride and respect, calling out with one voice, "General, ma'am." Her heart swells with a fierce, undeniable truth. This is her life, her calling, and it is finally being embraced by those she loves most. As she steps toward her transport, the crisp sound of boots on pavement echoes behind her. She pauses, turning back one last time. There, standing just beyond the threshold of what was once uncertainty, is her mother's proud smile. It speaks volumes, words unspoken but deeply understood. In that smile she finds reassurance, acceptance, love. A new chapter begins here, not at a funeral where she was banned, but right now, in this moment, where her identity as a soldier and a daughter are no longer separate stories, but parts of the same whole. She steps forward, the horizon wide and waiting, the weight of her past no longer a burden, but a foundation, a beginning. And as the engines roar to life, she carries with her the strength of her family, the honor of her rank, and the unbreakable bond between who she was and who she is now. This is more than a deployment. This is her story, one of resilience, courage, and the power of being truly seen. "General, ma'am," the words echo, steady and sure, and she knows, without a doubt, this is just the beginning. Finding strength in service. The first days in my new unit felt like stepping into a storm. Every face was unfamiliar, every word a test. But beneath the sharp edges of discipline and routine, I sensed something else. Something steady, something real, a bond, forged not by blood, but by shared purpose. They called me General, ma'am, not just because of my rank, but because they saw in me the weight of a legacy. I carried it quietly, tucked beneath the folds of my uniform, a memory that both anchored and drove me forward. The Marines around me, each one carried stories that could fill volumes. Stories of sacrifice, of battles fought in far-off places, of comrades lost and missions completed against impossible odds. They didn't wear their scars openly, but in their eyes and in the firmness of their handshakes, the stories were there. I learned to listen, to understand. Training was relentless. Every dawn brought new challenges. Every dusk left us exhausted but stronger. I pushed myself harder than I thought possible, knowing that this was more than just preparation. It was a tribute, a way to honor my father's memory, to live up to the lessons he had engraved in my heart. He taught me about resilience. Not just the strength to endure, but the courage to lead with integrity, to stand tall when the world seemed determined to knock me down. To find strength not in defiance, but in service. I remembered his words as I drilled alongside my fellow Marines. Strength isn't just muscle, it's heart, it's loyalty, it's knowing you're part of something bigger than yourself. Those words became my mantra. Gradually, the walls I had built around myself began to crumble. The unit became more than just a team. I found a family. We shared quiet moments between exercises, swapping stories of home and hardship, laughter ringing out amid the discipline. Their acceptance was unconditional. They didn't question my past or the scars I carried. Instead, they honored the woman I was becoming. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, a Marine approached me. His eyes held the same quiet determination I felt inside. "General, ma'am," he said, saluting with a respect that went beyond rank. In that moment, I realized something profound. This was where I belonged, not because of the uniform I wore, but because of the trust we built together. The memory of being barred from my father's funeral still burned within me. It was a wound that refused to heal. But here, among these Marines, I found a new kind of honor, a living tribute to the man who had shaped me, even when the world tried to erase his memory. Every day, as I stood shoulder to shoulder with my unit, I felt his presence, not as a shadow, but as a guiding light. His lessons echoed in every command I gave, every challenge I faced. I was no longer just his daughter. First was a Marine, carrying forward a legacy of sacrifice and service. The bond we formed wasn't just about duty, it was about understanding. About knowing that each of us carried burdens unseen, dreams unspoken. Together we were stronger. Together we were unstoppable. I found strength in their stories as much as in my own. A Marine who lost a brother in combat. Another who fought to overcome doubt and fear. Each one a testament to resilience. Their courage fueled my resolve, reminding me that service was not just an obligation, it was a privilege. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see the bigger picture. This unit was more than a collection of individuals. It was a community that stood unwavering in the face of adversity. A place where my struggles were understood, where my aspirations were nurtured. I started to feel the weight of my father's legacy not as a burden but as a mantle I was proud to bear. They called me General, ma'am, not just out of respect, but because they believed in what I represented, a symbol of perseverance, of honor reclaimed. In quiet moments, I thought about that painful day, the funeral where I was banned, the silence that tried to erase my father's story. But here, with these Marines, that silence was broken. Every salute, every word of encouragement, every shared hardship was a testament to a legacy that refused to be forgotten. I knew the road ahead would be challenging. There would be battles, both external and internal, but I was ready. Ready to face whatever came next, armed with the strength of my unit and the memory of my father. Together, we stood as one. Marines bound by duty, by honor, by a shared commitment to something greater than ourselves. And in that unity, I found a strength I never knew I had. This was my home now, my family, my purpose. And as the Marines stood and saluted me, calling out, "General, ma'am," I understood that I was not alone. I carried my father's legacy with me, in every step, every decision, every moment of service. The past had tried to hold me back. But here, in the heart of this unit, I was moving forward, stronger, proud, unbreakable. The call to action. The call came in the dead of night. The kind that makes your heart skip. The kind that pulls you from whatever restless sleep you've managed to steal. My unit was needed, immediately. No time for questions, no time for doubt, just action. I stood there, in my uniform, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders like a second skin. The gravity of the situation pressed down on me, thick and unyielding. Every instinct screamed that this mission was different, more urgent, more dangerous. But even in that heavy silence, I found myself reaching back to a memory, a legacy that steadied my trembling hands. My father. He was a man who faced danger without flinching. His bravery wasn't loud or showy. It was quiet, resolute, a steady flame in the darkest hours. I remembered the stories, the lessons he never spoke aloud but lived every day. How he taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. The adrenaline surged through me, sharp and electric. It was no longer just about me. It was about the team that looked to me for direction. About the mission that could not fail. About honoring the legacy of the man who had shaped me. I gathered my Marines. Their faces were a mosaic of nerves, determination, and trust. I saw in their eyes the same uncertainty I felt. But I also saw hope, that unspoken belief that we were ready. I spoke to them then, not as a distant commander behind a rank, but as a leader who had walked through fire. I told them about my father, not as a hero of the past, but as a beacon for this moment. I told them that fear was natural, but it would not define us, that we were bound by something greater than ourselves. This mission is tough, I said, voice steady, but so are we. Each of you carries the strength of everyone who's ever stood before you, and those who believe in you now. We move forward together, no hesitation, no looking back. There was a pause, a breath held in unison. Then, a nod, a spark, the shift from doubt to resolve. We prepared to move out. Every detail mattered. Gear checked, weapons ready, communication lines clear. I could feel the weight of the moment press in again, but this time it fueled me instead of crippling me. As we assembled, the memory of being banned from my father's funeral came crashing back. How I was told I wasn't welcome, how the pain of that rejection cut deeper than any wound I'd ever known. But here, with these Marines standing tall beside me, that wound began to heal. Because they weren't just soldiers following orders, they were my family now. The same Marines who, when I finally returned home, stood at attention and saluted me, not as a woman, not as a rank, but as General, ma'am. That moment changed everything. It was the ultimate acknowledgement, not just of who I was, but of what I had become. It was the answer to every doubt whispered in the shadows, every door slammed in my face. And now, as we prepared to face whatever lay ahead, I carried that salute with me. It was a symbol of respect earned, of battles fought and won, of barriers broken. I looked at my team one last time and said, let's show them who we are. The call to action wasn't just a mission order. It was a test of resilience, of leadership, of legacy. And as the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, I knew one thing for sure. No matter what happened, I would face it head on. Because I was no longer just a girl banned from a funeral. I was a general. I was a leader. And my Marines were ready to follow me anywhere. The road ahead was uncertain. Danger lurked in every shadow. But in that moment, standing tall with my unit, I felt invincible. Because I carried with me the strength of my father's bravery, the respect of my Marines, and an unbreakable commitment to my duty. We moved out, together, and nothing could stop us. In the heart of the storm hit faster than anyone expected. One moment, we were moving steadily through the compound. The next, chaos erupted all around us. Explosions echoed, gunfire ricocheted off the walls, and the sky darkened with smoke and dust. My team was shaken, but I couldn't let that show. Not yet. Not ever. I took a deep breath, locking eyes with each of them in turn. Stay sharp, move as one. That's what I said, more to myself than anyone else. The mission was clear. Get in, secure the perimeter, extract the wounded, and get out alive. But nothing about today was going to be easy. The enemy was relentless. They had us pinned down in the heart of the compound, and every step forward felt like wading through quicksand. Bullets zipped past, and I could hear the frantic calls of my squad leaders trying to coordinate under the pressure. My training kicked in, instincts honed through years of drills, sweat, and sacrifice. This was what I was made for. Suddenly, a grenade landed mere feet from where I was crouched. Time seemed to freeze. My heart slammed against my ribs as I lunged forward, pulling a young private behind me. The blast knocked us both off our feet, ringing in my ears, but both of us were alive. That close call hammered home the truth I'd known all along. Life is fragile. Too fragile to waste a single moment. As I helped steady the private, I felt a familiar weight on my shoulders. The weight of responsibility. The weight of every life depending on my decisions. I thought back to my father's voice, steady and unwavering, teaching me about bravery, not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it head-on. Sacrifice isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding the part worth fighting for. Those words gave me strength. I spoke calmly, firmly. Keep moving. Watch each other's backs. Eyes up, heads down. We're getting through this. Together. The team rallied. Despite the chaos, I saw the fire ignite in their eyes. This was no longer just a mission. It was a test of our bond. Every Marine, every soldier, every teammate, moving with purpose, trusting one another without hesitation. We edged toward the extraction point, but the enemy wasn't giving up. A sniper's bullet whizzed past, grazing my arm. Pain seared through me, but I pushed it aside. There was no time for weakness. Not now, not ever. "Medic!" I called out, scanning for the field corpsman. He was already moving toward me, his hands steady, his focus unwavering. I swallowed the sting and nodded. "I'm okay. Keep your eyes sharp." The path narrowed, and we found ourselves hemmed in by rubble and fire. The radio crackled with urgent voices. Reinforcements were delayed. We were on our own. I gathered the team. "Listen up. We're not leaving anyone behind. We move fast. We move smart. Cover me. We clear the way, one step at a time." The assault was brutal. I led from the front, calling out commands, dodging debris, guiding my team through each deadly obstacle. Every breath was a fight. Every heartbeat a countdown. In the midst of the chaos, I caught a glimpse of a fallen comrade, a young Marine barely older than me. His eyes met mine, wide with fear and pain. I knelt beside him, gripping his shoulder. "Hold on, you're not alone." For a moment, the storm outside faded. It was just him and me. I whispered the words my father once told me, words that had carried me through every hardship. Bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about standing strong when it matters most. We dragged him to safety, the team covering our retreat. The weight of that moment stayed with me, the fragility of life, the unbreakable bond of those who fight side by side. Finally, we reached the extraction point. The chopper's blades were a roaring promise of safety. I counted every one of my team as they boarded. No one left behind. As the chopper lifted off, the storm began to subside. The world outside was quiet now, but inside me something had shifted. I had led through hell and back. I had faced the impossible, and my team had followed me, trusted me. Later, when the dust settled and the mission was over, the Marines stood at attention. They looked at me, not just as their commander, but as something more. The respect in their eyes was unmistakable. "General," one of them said quietly, but with unmistakable pride. "Ma'am, that single salute was everything. It was a testament to my journey. From being banned, misunderstood, and underestimated, to standing tall in the face of adversity. The Marines saw me now, not just as a leader, but as one of their own. In that moment, I felt my father's teachings echo louder than ever. Bravery, sacrifice, camaraderie. These weren't just words. They were the heart of who I was. The mission had tested me, pushed me beyond my limits, but it had also solidified my belief. I was made for this. I was ready. Because in the heart of the storm, when everything seemed lost, we found something greater. We found each other, and together we stood unbreakable. Homecoming and healing. There was a moment, as I stepped through the front door, when time seemed to hold its breath. The weight of the uniform I wore wasn't just fabric and metals. It was every hard-fought mile, every sleepless night, every challenge that had brought me home. My family was there, waiting, eyes wide, hearts open, and in that instant, the distance between us, stretched by years and unspoken pain, began to dissolve. My mother's arms wrapped around me first, tight, as if trying to hold me whole. I could feel her trembling, and somewhere beneath it all, relief. My younger brother, once a boy who barely understood my choices, now looked at me with something new, respect tempered by awe. And then, my father. His eyes, steady and unwavering, met mine. No words were needed. His pride was loud in the silence. They asked me to tell them everything, how the mission had unfolded, the dangers I faced, and the unexpected moments that tested my resolve. I spoke carefully, not wanting to relive the hardest parts too vividly, but honest enough to share the truth. I told them how in the darkest hours I thought of him, of the legacy he left behind. How his courage, his integrity, and his quiet strength became my armor when the world seemed to crumble. You know, I said, when I was banned from the funeral, it felt like a betrayal. Not just of me, but of everything we stood for. But then, the Marines, those brothers and sisters in arms, stood at attention. They saluted me. "General, ma'am." That moment changed everything. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My brother shifted, suddenly understanding the weight of that salute. Not just a gesture, but an acknowledgement of who I had become and the battles I fought, both seen and unseen. I wasn't just fighting for a mission, I continued. I was fighting to honor my father's name, to prove that his legacy was alive in me. And when those Marines turned to me, it was as if they were saying, "We see you, we stand with you." My father reached out, his hand covering mine. "You've made us proud," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because of the uniform or the rank, but because of your heart. You carried us all with you." In that room, surrounded by the people who knew me best, I felt a wave of healing wash over me. The barriers built by years of misunderstanding crumbled, replaced by a newfound connection. It wasn't just a homecoming, it was a reconciliation. The kind that only time, courage, and truth can bring. We talked late into the night. I shared stories of camaraderie, the quiet moments before a mission, the weight of decisions that could mean life or death. They listened, not as spectators, but as witnesses to a journey they hadn't fully understood before. "My service shaped me," I said softly. "But it also shaped us. All of us. It taught me that strength isn't just about standing alone, but about standing together. And I believe it brought us closer." My mother nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "We needed this," she admitted. "Needed to see you, really see you." My brother smiled, a mix of pride and something deeper stirring in his eyes. "I get it now. You're not just our sister. You're a leader, a general." We all laughed, the sound light and genuine, filling the room with a warmth that had been missing for too long. As I looked around at the family I had almost lost to distance and silence, I realized that the journey wasn't over. Healing doesn't happen all at once. But this moment, this embrace, this sharing, was a beginning. A promise that we would face the future together, stronger and more united. And in that promise, I found peace.